Hello, sir.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible? Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are. So let us wait for our viewers to join.
Okay.
Just give me 2 minutes.
Okay. Just let me know when this is to start, okay?
Yes, just 2 minutes. It is like
Yeah, sure.
4:05.
Take your time.
We'll start at 4:07. 4:07.
Sure.
Okay, sir. It's almost 4:07.
Yeah.
And almost the viewers are joining, sir. It is almost 134 viewers. Yes, sir.
Right.
So yeah, sir. Shall we start?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, sir.
Can we start?
So hello. Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah. So hello, very warm good evening to one and all present here. I extend my warmest welcome to each and every viewers present over here on behalf of legalrootleaf.com. And now I would like to introduce our key speaker, sir. Uh, so today we have Dhananjay Jain, an advocate on record in Supreme Court of India. His forte is law of contracts and law of arbitration, and he has a wide experience in dealing with commercial agreements. So I repeat again, today we have Mr. Dhananjay Jain, an advocate on record in Supreme Court of India. His forte is law of contracts and law of arbitration, and he has a wide experience in dealing with commercial agreements. So, sir, today's topic for the webinar is effect of COVID-19 on commercial agreements. I repeat again, today's topic for the webinar is effect of COVID-19 on commercial agreements. Sir, but actually before we get started, let us get into some points. So the webinar will be of 1 hour. Our speaker will speak for 40 minutes and rest 20 minutes will be the question answer round. And if anyone has a question during the session, can put up their questions during the session, and the questions will be answered at the end part of the session. So please wait till then. And as we have a very short time, in that case, if anyone questions don't get answered, please don't mind. So without any further delay, let's get started. Good evening, sir. Welcome to our session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thanks for this introduction. And
Yes,
I
sir.
also thank Avnish for arranging this platform through Legal
Yes,
Route
sir.
Lift to enable to air my views on this issue which you have picked for the day, the topic of
Yes, sir.
COVID-19 on commercial agreements.
Yes, sir.
So I thank you and I start from here.
Yes, sir.
Actually, the lawyers and people of commerce, those who are involved in drafting of contracts, the clause of force majeure has never been a matter of attention for most of the draftsmen or lawyers or everybody, since it is one of the most usual and banal clauses in the agreement, and it goes without much thinking, and it's basically a copy-paste clause, because it has never been that the situation which we are encountering today has been witnessed by anybody, not at least me, maybe people with richer experience than me, but yes, this is as novel as corona itself. So the situation is very serious and very, very dismal. But before I come to the definition part of force majeure, it is necessary to understand the situation which has been brought about by this pandemic of COVID-19. It is the consequential lockdown of the COVID-19, which is more serious, which has been announced by the government, wherein it has become a matter of concern for the entire economy, as has been brought to standstill, and the manufacturing units, trading, court hearings, and virtually everything is undergoing a sea change. As everybody is aware, those who are involved with court proceedings at some level, that the courts are not virtually functioning in the physical format as they used to function, but now we are only on virtual hearing and through video conferencing, which is a welcome change, and it has taught all of us to be very technically advanced. Having said that, I will just now come on the part of the applicability of COVID-19 as a force majeure condition
Sir?
on the contract.
Hello,
Yeah.
sir. Sorry for the disruption. So can you please make your brightness high on your phone so that I can see your face clearly? I think the light is a bit low. Brightness of the phone.
No, I think I'll just try to, if I can, just a minute.
The light is a bit low, sir, actually.
Actually, I'm...
Brightness of the phone.
Right,
Yes,
now it's
sir,
fine?
yeah. Okay, sir, yes, fine. Let's continue.
Yeah.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, that's okay, that's fine. So definition of force majeure as it is provided on Google, I would start taking the reference point from Google, because as everybody knows, whatever search is to be done on internet, the first pop-up comes from Google. So the Google has defined force majeure as an unforeseeable circumstance that prevents someone from fulfilling a contract. So it's a French term, which is a Latin derivative of vis major, which means act of God. And the Black's Law Dictionary defines it as an event or effect that can neither be anticipated or controlled. So it's an occurrence or eventuality which is beyond the control of contracting party. This expression, this term force majeure, has not been per se defined in Indian Contract Act or any judicial or in any statute. Interpreting the concept of force majeure and explaining it repeatedly. One classic definition is found in Supreme Court judgment, which is in AIR 1961. I would quote the judgment. It's Dhanrajmal Govindram versus Shamji Kalidas. It refers to some English case law of 1920 of King's Bench, wherein it says that it's an expression where the intention is to save the defaulting party from the consequences of anything over which he has no control. So, as per the Contract Act, if a party is in breach of a commitment or a reciprocal promise, then the same is actionable under Section 73 of the Contract Act by a suit for civil action for damages and compensation against the guilty party, the person who is at fault in case of breach. The successful invocation of force majeure clause attempts to dispense the performing party with its obligation. That's one. The second, it saves the defaulting party from the consequences of non-performance. So whether COVID is a force majeure condition or not a condition, I would just come in a moment on that. But before that, I would just say that in the realm of contracts, the basic concern of a party is that in case the party is at breach, or in case the party is not able to perform the obligations as promised and capsuled in the contract, so can it legally escape the liability which it might visit him? So I'll just now come to the part that how the Indian jurisprudence has been developed on this aspect of force majeure, though it has not been very happily drafted in the statute, but we find some reference in Section 32 of the Indian Contract Act, which is rather implicit, not very vocal about it. The concept of force majeure has neither been defined or specifically dealt with in the statutes. However, I'll just read from the Section 32 from the Contract Act. It says enforcement of contracts contingent on event happening, contingent contracts to do or not to do anything if an uncertain future event happens, cannot be enforced by law unless and until that event has happened. If the event becomes impossible, such contracts become void. So the essential ingredients are of this Section 32 of the Contract Act, that occurrence of an unforeseen event, that the parties have agreed that in the eventuality of an unforeseen event happening, that happens, the parties to the agreement has factored such an occurrence that by writing such a clause in the agreement, the parties have already anticipated such an event or not happening of an event in the agreement, and it has been stated in the agreement. Performance of the obligations under the contract becomes impossible or impracticable. I'll just illustrate it because the Contract Act tries to illustrate every possible situation and scenario. I'll just give an example here. A contract to pay B a sum of money when B marries C. C dies without marrying to B. The contract becomes void. Now, another aspect of the contract law, which is not as per 32, which is not covered in the contract between the parties, and when the contract is silent to this aspect of force majeure, it is Section 56, which says agreement to do an impossible act. Contract to do an act afterward becoming impossible or unlawful. A contract to do an act after the contract is made becomes impossible, or reason of some event which the promisor could not prevent. Unlawful becomes void when the act becomes impossible or unlawful. So this Section 56 has two parts. First, it moves on the premise that the contract does not factor of such a stipulation or a term in the agreement. Deholds the agreement. This is a provision which, even when the agreement does not contemplate such a clause, it is still deholds the agreement. This can come into play. It has two parts. One is contracts which in present, on the date of entering the agreement, are void. I'll just give an example. Cure by black magic. A enters into a contract with B to cure a disease or ailment by black magic. It's a contract which is an agreement which is void ab initio. And the second part, wherein the lawful act has subsequently become impossible or unlawful to perform. Example: A contracts to act at a theatre for 6 months in consideration of a sum paid in advance by B. On several occasions, A is too ill to act. The contract to act on those occasions becomes void. So the import of this section is that parties may consent and agree on some sort of performance, but with the passage of time and in future, that performance becomes impossible or becomes unlawful. The I will just give suggestive illustrations where the 56 will, section 56 will come into play, though it is not exhaustive, but they are just suggestive, that destruction of the subject matter of the property or the subject matter of the contract, non-existence and non-occurrence of a particular state of things, incapacity or for personal service by reason of death or unsoundness, by acts like the government regulations or by war, or intervention by legislative or executive authority, which has the effect of fundamental change in the transaction. So I will just pause here for a moment, and before I draw distinction between 32 and 56, I would just try to, for the audience, I would just try to say that the contract, every party, as I started by saying, that every party has an obligation under the contract, and that is how, if there is a breach, the guilty party becomes or is liable to pay the compensation to the aggrieved party or the innocent party.
Yes, sir.
I'll just take it. Now, the contract can be discharged by various modes, and there are various ways in which the contract comes to an end and the obligation of the parties may come to an end. One is, there are 4 ways. One is the discharge by performance. Suppose A agrees with B to sell certain goods, and A tenders the amount and B handovers the goods. At that point of time, the contract comes to an end by performance. The parties are discharged by performance. It could be actual performance or attempted performance. A valid tender that, okay, I have come to at your doorstep to deliver the goods. Like in this COVID time, the services of a big basket and all those things, if they come and come at your doorstep and tender the goods, it's a valid tender. Though the person may not be at home to receive the goods, but the parties are discharged by a performance. Then there is discharge by mutual agreement. The discharge by mutual agreement is that the parties enter into a contract initially making certain understandings and agreements, or agreeing to certain terms. However, after a certain stage, they may feel they may want to revisit the terms of the agreement, and it is the section 62 of the Contract Act which gives the parties to right to novate the agreement. And by novation, the earlier contract comes to an end, and the parties are discharged by mutual agreement, and the new contract comes into play, and the rights and obligation of the parties as envisaged by them in the earlier contract comes to an end. So that is discharge by mutual agreement. Now the third type of discharge is discharge by breach. Suppose if a party commits a breach, the other party has the right to proceed for action against that person for breach, being the innocent party or the aggrieved party, and the party which has committed the breach becomes the guilty party, and by that the innocent or the aggrieved party may bring an action for damages and compensation against the guilty party. So this is discharge by breach. Now the fourth part, which is the most crucial part for today's discussion, discharge by impossibility of performance, which I was referring to, section 56. If it is impossible for any of the parties to the contract to perform their obligations, then the impossibility of the performance leads to discharge of the contract.
Yes, sir.
If the impossibility exists from the start, then the impossibility is ab initio. However, the impossibility might also arise later due to unforeseen change in law. For example, A contracts with B to supply certain amount of tobacco. However, due to government regulations, tobacco might become a contraband and illegal to be dealt with, or to be the dealing has been announced to be illegal. In that situation, the subject of the contract becomes illegal. Destruction of the subject matter essential to be performed, essential for performance. For example, I'll just give you the hotels at the bank of rivers during the flood of Kedarnath. They were washed away. So the destruction of the subject matter leads to frustration and consequently discharge by frustration. And in case, one of the examples could be declaration of war, where the government declares war with another state, which are the contracting parties, and their business relations and the economic relations are brought to an end. So that is discharge by frustration. So we are primarily concerned about this aspect, which is discharge by frustration, because in any agreement, when a party seeks discharge, it should be a valid discharge and it should not be visited by any action wherein there would be a liability which would be fastened upon the guilty party. So when we talk about COVID, there are two aspects. Whether the pandemic of COVID-19 could be cited as a force majeure condition in the commercial contract.
Yes, sir.
So now I will just come to the distinguishing part between the section 32 and 56. Section 32 envisages the situation where it is a term in the contract which considers force majeure as a point of discharge. However, in the absence of any such term, the section 56 comes into play, and where it gives the party the discharge by frustration. Now I will just come to this aspect of some of the notifications which have been issued by various governments during this period, wherein the notifications are to the effect that force majeure has been said to have come into play. Like there was a government notification wherein they were giving certain extensions to real estate industry. Like the Real Estate Regulatory Authority has given an extension of 6 months to various builders and developers, that they can take 6 months extension to complete the projects. Now, these notifications which have been time and again issued have limited application, and they are too industry specific, where the contracts are at executory stage. I would just throw some light on this aspect of executed contracts and executory contracts and executed contracts. A contract which has been executed, it means that the purpose and the transaction has been performed. For example, the builder has agreed into a contract with a customer where the customer has to purchase the project or a residential plot in future. That is an executory contract, that it has yet to be performed. However, there are certain contracts which are executed, like in the case of lease. If parties enter into a lease agreement and the landlord puts the tenant into the possession of the property, that becomes the executed contract.
So, sir, I want to ask you a question. Sir, what is your advice to lawyers who didn't force to have a forgery laws in the commercial contracts? So, what would you say about this?
See, those lawyers, those who have omitted to have this clause in their agreement, they can very well rely upon Section 56 of the Indian Contract Act. But for that, they will have to prove that the situation which has been visited by COVID-19 is of such nature where it permanently and fundamentally alters the position of the initial contract. So it is not only that if the contract contemplates a term in the agreement of force majeure, only in that case the force majeure would come to their rescue. It could be by import of Section 56 Indian Contract Act, where even if the contract does not contemplate such a situation, but the situation is such that the parties are absolved of their obligations by happening of such an event. So they can take recourse to Section 56 of the Contract Act.
Yes, sir. So, and sir, as sir, during this lockdown, lawyers are negotiating contracts rather than approaching courts. Or can you explain
Yes.
this? Like the lawyers are negotiating contracts with rather than approaching courts.
See, not instead of approaching courts, negotiating the terms amongst themselves and on behalf of their parties, it is primarily for the reason that they are understanding that the situation is a very unlucky situation and everybody has been visited by bad luck. So there's no point in going to court and litigating for a cause which everybody understands it's a situation which is only due to some bad luck. But yes, I understand that lawyers are renegotiating these terms because they understand the lacuna and the merits of their case. And having said that, if they feel that they are not too strong in the courts, so that gives them a little push for going for mediation and discussions with the opposite sides, so that they may bring about a situation in which their clients have a win-win situation without going to court, because they obviously feel that on the strict it's better to have a mediation or a dialogue with the other side and settle the matter, because everybody is understanding that the situation which has come about, the mediation is the best way out, because everybody is suffering losses. So it's only the point of mitigation of loss.
Yes, sir. So what is the impact of COVID-19 on Indian economy? Like how it is affecting our economic system of of India? So
See, that's not a very legal question, I may say. It's based on purely on understanding of economy. The situation, it has a worldwide impact, and I think none of the countries are absorbed from its impact, and so is India. And I think this would have a very far-reaching and a very impact in the long run, because every industry, be it manufacturing, trading, legal industry, or IT. I'm not sure about IT industry, because IT industry seems to have made the most of it, because everything is now online. But apart from that, and also groceries and medical industry, all the other industry has seen all-time hit in terms of money and in terms of workability, because we have seen there during lockdown there was exodus of laborers from almost all the metro cities to their villages, which has brought everything to a standstill. And now I think with the release of with the relaxation of these lockdown policies, laborers and workers are coming back, and the economy is coming back to life. That's, I think,
yes, sir.
that would have a far-reaching impact. But I think it's being handled by the government well.
Sir, then what did you say about the rising unemployment problem due to the COVID-19 pandemic in India? So unemployment is very rising due to COVID-19. People are not like shops are closed, their daily works have been closed, so people are unemployed. So what did you say about this, sir?
See, this would push everybody towards self-employment of sorts, because the today's situation is that there is no work in the industry, there is no work in the market. People, even though they are trying and finding work, but due to lockdown and due to closure of business in maximum in retail sector, it appears that the workmen would not be getting good job opportunities in near future. So
Yes, sir.
that's a situation which has to be dealt with on ground by the employees and employer both. So
Yes, sir.
it's a very sad situation. So now, if I come back to the legality of the COVID-19 as a force majeure condition, I would just like you to take to a few judgments by our Supreme Court and High Courts, various High Courts, where in this situation, this COVID has been taken to be a force majeure condition, and the contracts have been strictly interpreted to assess whether this would come into play and absolve the parties of their respective obligations. So I would just start with one judgment of Honorable Supreme Court in 2017, which is Energy Watchdog versus CERC. The facts of this case were that one of the parties were to supply coal from Indonesia for generation of power in India, and the pricing of coal in those countries in Indonesia, it went manifolds up, and due to that reason the force majeure clause was invoked, citing it as a reason that due to change in government policies, the coal has become expensive in that country, and force majeure was invoked. However, Supreme Court has held that variation in pricing or these things would not come into play and would not be a condition of force majeure. And I would just quote from the judgment that a force majeure is governed by Indian Contract Act 1872 insofar as it is relatable to an express or implied clause in a contract. It is governed by Chapter 3 dealing with the contingent contracts and more particularly Section 32 thereof. Insofar as a force majeure event occurs, deholds the contract, it is dealt by virtue by a rule of positive law under Section 56 of the Contract Act. As I was referring, that in case the clause finds a mention in the agreement in the form of Section 32, if it is not there, then Section 56 comes into play. I would further read, the force majeure clause does not exhaust the possibility of unforeseen events occurring outside natural or non-natural events, but the thrust of their argument was really that so long as the performance is hindered by an unforeseen event, the clause applies. There was a clause in which the court interpreted that this clause has no application since it is only change in the cost of fuel or the agreement becoming onerous to perform are not treated as a force majeure events under the agreement itself. We are therefore, the court holds that they are therefore of the view that neither it was a fundamental basis of the contract dislodged, nor was any frustrating event, except for the rise in price of coal, which was excluded specifically in the agreement. The court has developed certain principles, which I will just say. When the contract contains an express or implied term according to which the performance of the contract would stand discharged in certain circumstances, the dissolution of the contract would take place under the terms of the contract itself, and it shall be governed by Section 32 of the Contract Act. When the contract does not contain a clause as referred above, it shall be governed by the principles of Section 56 of the Contract Act. The conclusion is that the word impossible has not been used in Section 56 in the sense of physical or literal impossibility. The performance of act may not be literally impossible, but it may be impracticable and useless from the point of view of the object and purpose of the parties. Now I would just refer to another judgment of High Court of Delhi, which is Halberton Offshore Services versus Vedanta Limited. In this judgment, which is a very recent judgment, in this judgment, it has been held by the single judge of the Honorable High Court that I just quote from the one para from the judgment, which refers to COVID-19, which has been acknowledged to be a force majeure condition. However, having said that, the court has not invoked this force majeure condition to stay the invocation of bank guarantees, only for the simple reason that the court holds that this invocation is not proper and is very, very delayed in and at a very belated stage. However, the court holds that this would have to be dealt in the arbitration proceedings and not in a proceeding under Section 9, which is the interim measure. The court holds like this. It is under the factual backdrop that the ground of force majeure taken in March 2020 would have to be adjusted. The grounds taken to invoke the force majeure clause are that due to outbreak of COVID-19, experts from France who may be required cannot travel to India. Since the force majeure clause in the contract covers epidemic and pandemics, the contractor claims that its non-performance is justified and the invocation of the bank guarantee is liable to be stayed. There is no doubt that COVID-19 is a force majeure event. Here the court holds that COVID-19 is a force majeure event, but was this event the cause of non-performance is to be seen by the courts. So court, after having given at the interim stage the stay from invocation of bank guarantees, vacated the same and referred the parties to arbitration. This is one of the judgments where the court has held that COVID-19 is one of the force majeure conditions, but still has not come to the rescue of the parties because of the belated stage of the invocation.
Yes, sir.
Now I would refer to another judgment of High Court of Delhi, in which the judgment is Ramanand and others versus Dr. Girish Soni, this is a case in which the tenant had approached the court seeking exemption from payment of the lease amount. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The tenant had approached the court seeking suspension and exemption from the payment of the lease amount. The court said that you cannot have exemption or suspension of the lease amount as you are already in possession, and this is not an executory contract, it's an executed contract. As I was referring to the difference between the executed contract and the executory contract. So the court held that this is an executed contract, you haven't put in possession. Mere disruption of the business activities would not per se become a force majeure condition, and you will continue to pay in case you want to go ahead with the lease and want to occupy the premises.
Yes, sir.
Now I would just refer to one last judgment of Delhi High Court, which is on section 108BE of the Transfer of Property Act. In this, premises were intended to be run as a restaurant by the tenant. However, the premises came to be sealed subsequently after the tenant was put into possession due to unauthorized construction. And it was held that the obligation under section 108BE of the Transfer of Property Act for suspension of rent would not come into play where the property has not been rendered substantially and permanently unfit for the purposes it was let. So the court held that there is no case made out for any sort of exemption or suspension of rent, as it does not permanently or substantially makes the property unfit. So it's only a temporary measure. It's only a temporary phase wherein the property is not able to be used. So the court has refused to grant any indulgence to the tenant in such circumstances.
Yes, sir. So, sir, what are your comments on? Okay, sir.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. So, what are your comments on cases and arbitration held online? So, there is a lot of network problem during such hearings. So, what is your advice to lawyers regarding this issue?
It's a very welcome step which has been taken by almost all courts and all the public functionaries, and especially courts and arbitrators, for the reason that it's the movement as of now has also not become very free, and with the number of increasing cases of COVID, it's better that the precautions are taken. And now most of the hearings are conducted through WebEx. It's a virtual. It's an app of e-conferencing, and arbitrations are the arbitrators are also resorting to hearings by Zoom or webinar or WebEx. I think it's a welcome step because there is no physical presence of parties, and it can be very well conducted through e-conferencing. So it has the same effect. So that there is the wastage of time in interface is very little. So I think with passage of time, we will get to know the technology and its proper application, and I think it will be taken care of, and it's a welcome step, I think.
Sir. So, sir, shall we take the questions from the comment section, or you have some conclusions?
Just one last thing I would like to conclude. Just one last thing I would like to conclude by this topic. As the topic suggests, the impact of COVID-19 on contracts. So just three things I want to mention here. That till now, the contracts were not drafted from this perspective that there could be a case for suspension, there could be a case for termination despite there being a lock-in. So now the contracts in future, whenever they are now being entered into, the parties would have to also factor into consideration the aspect of suspension of their obligation.
Yes, sir.
As has been seen that almost none of the contracts carry this clause where the parties can come to a state where they can say that, okay, due to a prevalent situation, one of the parties may say that we are suspending our obligation for a specified period, say a period of 2 months, 6 months, for a temporary phase. The parties say that since we are not able to perform the contracts, it may not be terminated in its entirety, but it may only be suspended for a brief period. So now that will have to be factored into consideration while drafting the contracts henceforth.
Yes, sir.
And now the termination of contract, the clauses for termination will have to be viewed from both the parties. There have been instances where one of the parties does not have any right of termination, but now the parties will have to factor into consideration the aspect of termination by both the parties, considering that there could be circumstances where if the situation goes so much beyond control that the parties wants to come out of the contract, they may come out of without having any liability which gets incurred upon them. And obviously the force majeure contract, the force majeure clause in the contract has got to be drafted very happily and making it most inclusive and considering all the possible circumstances and scenarios in future and keeping all the provision for making an exit window, that all the factors should be factored into consideration before a force majeure clause is made into contract. So I would just conclude by saying that this was my whatever I could just share my ideas in this brief time, which was a lot given to me, and the preparation time which was discussed with you. So any questions now? I'm open to questions, whatever questions you may have.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes.
So viewers, you can put up your questions in the comment section. As I said before, I shall read out the questions to sir, and sir will absolutely answer those questions. If any of the questions is left out, please don't mind, because as we have a very short period of time, so it may occur. So okay, sir. First question is.
I can't read from my screen. You'll have to read out for me.
Yes, sir. Absolutely, I will read it out to you.
The question I will just read. Do the agreeing?
So one question
does
is
the
there,
agreeing party have the right to compensation for his performed part of contract done before the COVID, but the other party is incapable to pay the compensation? Is there any solution to it? See, this is only a temporary phase. It depends on the intention of the parties. In case this is only a temporary phase, in case this lockdown is withdrawn and suppose this pandemic is dealt in near future, the transient phase, this temporary phase will come to an end, and the party which has already taken benefits under the contract from another party would be called upon to perform its part of the obligation. And in case it is not able to perform its part of the obligation, in that case it will be taken to be a breach. So the party which has performed its part of the obligation before the hitting of pandemic, it would be well within its rights to lodge a claim for breach if the other party after this suspension comes to an end is not able to perform. And also the party which has performed its part of the obligation before the pandemic of this COVID-19, that party can always seek not compensation but a restoration to its earlier position that it can seek. I think that answers the question.
Yes, sir. Yes, viewers, please put up your questions. This time is running out. If you have any questions for our speaker, sir, or today's topic. Okay, as the pandemic is not over yet, what would you suggest for the future commercial agreements? There was a question from Disha Goswami.
See, for future contracts, as I said, that future contracts, it would continue to, the industry would continue to perform and function as it was, and the contracting parties would obviously negotiate their commercial terms. However, the only caveat is that the commercial terms have got to be drafted in a manner where there is maximum exit window for a party which perceives that there could be a liability due to this COVID situation. And in that case, the suspension of the agreement has also to be factored in by the contracting parties. Two clauses have to be taken care of now. One is suspension, that in case the situation does not improve, there has to be a temporary phase, which would be termed as suspension. And in case the temporary phase is extending way beyond the expected time, then in that case, the termination should be without any liability or consequence, and there could be escape from the agreement.
Okay, sir, one more question. In absence of force majeure clause, is it mandatory to renew the contract upon the occurrence of such an event? In absence of force majeure clause, is it mandatory to renew the contract upon the occurrence of such event? This is from
This would be a question. I'll just a minute. I'll just see.
Akshay Jain, can you please elaborate your question? Can you please, one more question, sir, can you please explain about the breach of contract regarding COVID pandemic?
Sorry, I just, can you please repeat the question?
Yes, sir. Sir, can you please explain about breach of contract regarding COVID pandemic?
The breach of contract during COVID would be seen in light of the fact whether the contract has the purpose of the contract been frustrated, or it has become impossible. And if that is the situation, then it would be a discharge. It would be a valid discharge for the parties. But in case the parties have not been discharged because of frustration, then the contract subsists.
Yes, sir. How this pandemic has affected the careers of various professional bodies? One more question from Mosu. Yes.
See, I can speak for lawyers. There's a flip side also, that those who are not very apt with technology, they are finding it difficult. But at the same time, it's for us to keep up with the technology and just go ahead with the change in the circumstances and technology. So I think it has both its positive and negatives. The negatives are obviously there, that courts are not functioning in their earlier manner. So the number of cases which are being listed in courts are way less than what they used to be. So I think every industry is facing a hit as of now, but it can't be, I can't comment upon every other industry, because certain industries like medicine, groceries, IT, they are flourishing at this point of time also. So it can't be that every industry is facing a hit. So it depends from industry to industry.
Okay, sir. So next question is, what will be the consequential losses of those contracts made before COVID? What will be the consequential losses of those contracts made before COVID? Yeah, I think it's talking about the clause of.
I think this has been answered. The consequential loss, I mean, by this, the question is that what would be the fate of contracts which during this COVID, which have due to this COVID, which are sought to be terminated. That the answer is, I have already answered this, that in case the parties can make out a case that there is a fundamental change, or the subject matter of the contract or the agreement has fundamentally altered, and in that case it would be frustration, it would be discharged by frustration. And in case the contracts carry a term of force majeure as per section 32 of the Contract Act, then in that case that force majeure contract will have to be seen, what is the wording of that contract, and whether there can be any refuse under that contract, under that clause.
Okay, so which sectors of economy will grow faster after COVID-19 according to you? From Sir Keshi 0.
I think every industry will come back, will be restored after this phase is over. See, no phase is permanent. So I think COVID is also a temporary phase only. And the moment this phase goes and normalcy is brought back to our lives, I think the situation would improve drastically, and it would improve drastically.
Okay. So, okay, then Akshi Zain has again asked the question, sir. She's saying that I mean to ask that if the force majeure clause is not absent in a contract, is it mandatory to renew the old contract since it becomes void if taken the defense under Section 56?
I'll have to have the question again. Can you please read out the
Okay.
question again once for me? I have understood the question, but I just want it again.
Yes, sure. I mean to ask that if the force majeure clause is absent in a contract, is it mandatory to renew the old contract since it becomes void if taken the defense under Section 56?
See, it would not become void in its by not having a force majeure clause. The contract does not become void. It's only that the parties are well within their rights to renegotiate the contract on the terms of the contract. So if they want to now incorporate by way of addendum any term in the contract, they are free to do that. However, in case there is no such term in the contract, it does not make the contract void or void ab initio, or there is no such there is no such concept of the contract becoming void because of not having a force majeure condition. It would be seen only in light of the fact whether the purpose of the contract is subsisting, whether the contract can be performed, whether from the enforceability part of the contract and performance. That has to be seen. And yes, parties can, at this point of time also, if the parties can renegotiate, can enter into a fresh contract, can obviously redraft a term and pass an addendum to this event.
Okay. So, sir, one more question. This is from Nidhi 28. Okay. So, what if in the agreement made an about force majeure is not stated, then will be the injured party will be compensated? I will get. Okay. What if in the agreement made an about force majeure is not stated, then will be the injured party will be compensated?
Yes, see, the injured party will be compensated in case the transaction does not fall within the scope of 32, and it also does not fall within the scope of 56. Then in that case, the injured party will be compensated. See, the defense to the present situation of COVID is that the parties, by merely having 32, the contract. So, see, I'll explain like this: if the contract has a clause of force majeure, it does not per se give any party a right to invoke that clause. As I just read from that judgment which I was referring, the judgment which I referred of Halliburton's judgment of the Honorable Delhi High Court, wherein there is a force majeure contract, wherein there is a force majeure clause in the agreement, but that has not been invoked properly, and it has been invoked at a belated stage. So merely having the force majeure clause would not per se entitle a party to have compensation or to absolve itself from the compensation or the damages. So it has to be seen from case to case basis whether the clause would come to rescue of a party. Merely having a clause, or merely having a force majeure clause would not make the party entitled, or it would absolve the party from any compensation. It has to be seen in the light of the circumstances which are visited to the parties.
Okay, sir. As an Instagram session is of 1 hour, so almost it is 1 hour to be ended. So we'll start a session again, like again a new session for the time. Okay, sir. Can I end the session?
We can take questions.
Sir, it is only left 2 minutes, so I think after 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay. Yes, you can do it.
Okay, sir. One question is: will the contracts containing any clause help to deal with the impact of COVID-19 on business? From Tasmin Arakhan. So you can.
I suggest you enter the next session. Okay. Then I will take the question.
Yes, sure.